Hello and welcome back to my channel. I haven't posted in a really long time, and the reason is I was a little bit busy. LOL. I was giving birth to my sons. I'm actually in their nursery right now. This is not where they sleep. We're still like putting it together. They sleep in our room in a bassinet. So we don't actually have them in here yet, but I thought it'd be perfect to kind of film this in their room since this story is about them and me. And today I'm gonna do the story of my twins' birth. And this is just like really daunted me. I gave birth 2 months ago. And since I gave birth, I knew that I wanted to share the story, but I was just really overwhelmed. I still am. Like, I'm still really nervous right now just because there's so many details. I tend to be a very long-winded person, and it's also a very personal story. So it's kind of scary. It's always scary to kind of like share so many personal details on the internet. But the reason that I wanted to share this is because when I was about to give birth, one of the things that I loved doing was watching other people's birth stories, and just hearing people tell, you know, the good, the bad, the ugly in such an honest way really touched me, and I felt like that prepared me for birth. So I remember thinking like, oh, I'd love to share my story after I give birth, you know, whatever ends up happening. So that's what I'm here to do today. I'm here to share the story of my twins' birth. So let's back it up 2 months. And I feel like there's a couple of things I have to preface this because a twin birth is like a specific, you know, it's like a specific type of birth. It's considered high risk because when you're pregnant with twins or multiples, you're basically at a higher risk for any pregnancy complication. So it's like anything that can go wrong is more likely to go wrong because being pregnant with twins, in my case, well, in anyone's case with twins, I can't speak for other multiples. I don't know about that as much, but it just puts a lot of strain on your body. So your body is carrying, you know, 2 babies when usually it would just be 1. You have, in my case, I had 2 different placentas, you know, ton of extra hormones, more blood in my body, like just everything is kind of magnified. So that's why I was so happy that the entire time of my pregnancy, everything was so healthy. Like I saw my doctor, my OB, and my high risk doctor, and the entire time, every appointment, they're like, wow, everything's looking great. My blood pressure was low, no gestational diabetes. The twins were growing really well. Everything just looked really good. So I was really happy because obviously I was at higher risk. However, that all changed at 36 weeks pregnant. So literally I'd gone in this is what's like crazy to me. I'd gone in the week before at my 35-week appointment. My blood pressure was low. Everything looked good. My ultrasound was good. All was great. I went in for my 36-week appointment and suddenly my blood pressure had jumped up a little bit. And they were like, that's something to keep an eye on, that, you know, because if you guys don't know, pre-eclampsia is something that is pregnant women are at risk for. And it basically means, well, I don't fully understand it, but it's high blood pressure is a big part of it. So they keep an eye on that all throughout your pregnancy to make sure, because pre-eclampsia is a very dangerous condition, and it can cause stroke, heart attack, even death, seizures. Like, it's really, really intense and you don't want to mess with it. And it can, from what I understand, it can come in and set in very quickly and like rapidly kind of increase within a couple of days. So that's what they were looking for. And that when my blood pressure jumped up, that's one of the signs of preeclampsia. And they were like, oh, this is really dangerous. It can be something dangerous. So let's keep an eye on this. So they sent me home that night. My brother-in-law, Christina, my sister's husband, Nick, came over and he took my blood pressure because he's an EMT. So he had like a blood pressure cuff, and it had gone up again a little bit. And then he left me his cuff, and the next morning my husband took my blood pressure and it had jumped up again. So at that point I was 36 weeks and I think I was 36 weeks and 3 days. That was Friday, September 9th. And I called my doctor and I let her know, and she said, okay, you need to go to the hospital immediately. This is something that can be very dangerous and you don't want to mess with it if you do have preeclampsia. So you need to be induced. And I was like, what? Because let me back it up. Like, I was pregnant with di twins, which means 2 different sacs, 2 different placentas, and twin boys, if you didn't see my gender reveal. And I was supposed to be induced at 38 weeks. So I wasn't ready. I was ready. I was so done. Like, let me just say that the pregnancy was so hard on my body. And at that point, I had been home for probably a month. I could barely move. Like, I don't know, other people, maybe they handled it better with twin pregnancy. My body took a beating. I'd been home all day. I couldn't really even walking up the stairs to go upstairs was so hard for me. So I stopped really going places. I couldn't walk around the store. I just got so out of breath because carrying all that extra weight was exhausting on my body, and I just felt like completely exhausted all the time, and just like so many horrible symptoms, rashes, my feet swelled up like crazy. Like I just had a lot of pregnancy complications and problems. So I was very on the one hand I was excited to give birth early, but I was nervous about the whole blood pressure thing because I'd always had low blood pressure my whole life, so I never dealt with that before. So I went in on Friday, September 9th. And this is the crazy part to me. So I had lost part of my mucus plug the night before. If you're a woman who's given birth, you probably know what I'm talking about. So I thought like, oh, my body's like, getting ready to go. But that can be something that happens and then like you don't give birth for like a couple weeks. So I knew my body was kind of getting ready. But then as soon as I called my doctor and she told me to go to the hospital, I was like, okay, I gotta go get a shower. So I went upstairs to take a shower. And as soon as I got in the shower, I started to feel excruciating pain. And I started literally screaming in the shower. I was like to my husband, Max, like screaming like, and I thought, oh my gosh, I must be in labor because I'm in so much pain. Like this is what contractions must be. So I thought for sure that my body was going into labor, but it was weird because it was this pain that was like on my lower left side, right where my first son, my older, how do I say that? The lower, I don't know, he's the baby that was going to come out first. And he ended up being Dominic, spoiler alert. But anyways, where Dominic was laying, it just started hurting, like lighting up like this lightning pain. So I was screaming and screaming and I thought I was in labor. So we went to the triage and checked in to get, my hospital room and everything. And they checked me and I wasn't in labor. I wasn't having contractions. I was only 1 centimeter dilated. So I wasn't really like anywhere near labor at that point. But they were like, what is this pain you're feeling? Like they were so confused. And I was just like, it really hurts. It really hurts. And like, I didn't know what it was. Later on, my doctor told me that she thinks I was having nerve pain. She thinks that because my twins were like taking up so much space, one of them had moved over into like, and he was like laying on my nerve and like pressing on it really hard. I don't really know if that's the truth, but that's what she thinks. So I was in this like intense nerve pain, and that started on Friday afternoon at like 1 p.m. We checked into hospital. They didn't get us a hospital bed until like 8:00 p.m. that night because it was so busy. And it was just like crazy. I was in all this pain and I felt like I was in labor because I was just consumed by this intense pain in my side that would not go away and that would just get worse and hurt so bad. But I wasn't actually in labor. I was just in a lot of pain already. So that started at 1 p.m. and I could not sleep that entire Friday night because of how much pain I was in. I was just like, it was excruciating. And then at 3 a.m, they started the induction. So they started me on Pitocin, which is a drug that is basically synthetic oxytocin, which is the hormone that your body releases that starts up your contractions. So they started me on Pitocin at 3 a.m. on Saturday, September 10th. And let me also add here, so this is like a very personal thing, and I really don't want to like say what I think is right or wrong, because in birth, I believe that like everyone's birth story is beautiful. Everyone is different and everyone's preferences are totally valid. Like no matter what type of birth you have, it's beautiful. It's bringing a life into, the world, and that's what matters the most. That being said, I personally did a lot of research, and I just felt like and I also really more than research, I prayed a lot, and I felt like God was calling me specifically to do an unmedicated birth. I don't think there's anything wrong with epidurals whatsoever. I just kind of felt like for me, that seemed like the right thing to do. And there's a lot of reasons for that. I don't know if I want to go into detail on that because it's such a like personal topic. But for me, it was a lot more about like my Catholic faith. Like, I don't know, it's just kind of wanting to enter into the full experience of birth. And I don't know, it's hard to explain, but I don't know, I really wanted to do it, and I felt like God was calling me to that. So I decided not to do any medication and not get the epidural. And so I got induced on Saturday morning at 3 a.m. And I was on that Pitocin for 19 hours with no medication. And through that time, they kept turning it up. They start at a really low level and they gradually increase it. And as they increase it, it increases the intensity of your contractions and with that, the pain of your contractions. So I really felt like my pain was pretty manageable for a lot of it. However, there were other factors that were kind of like wearing me down. So first of all, I already felt so horrible physically because I had been feeling so horrible because of just carrying twins. Second of all, I don't know what it was, if it was just how much pain I was in, if it was the Pitocin, but I started throwing up everything that I ate basically on I think early in the morning on Saturday morning, probably I don't know if it was the Pitocin, I really don't know. But I started throwing up everything that I ate. So I tried to eat and then I would throw up shortly afterwards. So I didn't really have any food in my system. And because of how much pain I was in, I didn't sleep at all Friday night. So this was kind of Saturday throughout the day. I'm laboring and laboring unmedicated. They're continuing to turn up the Pitocin. It's continuing to get more intense. And my contractions, the pain was manageable for a while, but at the very end, they put me on the second highest level, I guess, that they could do of Pitocin. It was a 28 out of 30. And I think I was on that for 3 or 4 hours. And the thing that was so frustrating was that during this time of laboring unmedicated on Pitocin, I was not progressing. They checked me in the beginning. I was a 1 centimeter dilated. They continued to check me throughout it, and I did not progress at all. After 19 hours, not to mention, 19 hours is not even counting, I don't know how many hours it was before that I was already in so much pain from whatever that nerve pain was that was just that caused me to not sleep at all the night before. So I was in intense excruciating pain. I hadn't slept all night and I hadn't eaten anything. Well, I'd eaten, but everything I ate, I threw up. So it got to be Saturday night. And when my doctor checked me and told me that I was still at a 1, I was shattered. It just broke me because I was I pushed so hard through all this pain. I had my doula with me. I had Max with me. They were helping me breathe, visualize. My doula had me try all these different positions to help things move along. And it was just not progressing. And it was so incredibly devastating. And I remember crying to Max and saying I feel like a failure. What's wrong with my body? Why is this happening? And honestly, I want to be real. My faith in God is so important to me. But at this point, I really started to feel abandoned by God. I'm just going to be real with you. I know that's not, the most happy thing to say, but I felt abandoned by God because I had prayed so much before I went into labor. And I had asked God, please bless me with a positive labor experience. I pray that I can do it unmedicated. I had all of these very specific things that I was asking God for and just being very bold and very intentional in my prayers. And I just felt, and even throughout the labor, I kept being God, please let me progress. Please just help me. Let me do this unmedicated. And I felt like God was just not listening to me. And that was just, and again, I know I'm not in control and it's you pray for something, but God is mysterious and he has his own ways. But I'm just telling you, in that moment, I felt very abandoned by God. And that was a huge part of my labor, was just kind of struggling with that feeling. And so at 10 o'clock on Saturday night, I was talking to my doctor. She was kind of telling us what our options were. And at that point I was she was I think I need to break your water. And that would hopefully help move things along. And I was is there anything you can do before you break my water? Because I knew that once she broke my water, what I've heard is that it makes your contractions even more painful because that layer of fluid kind of acts as a cushion. So I knew that I was already in excruciating pain on that super high level of Pitocin, contracting like crazy. And I knew that was going to make it worse. And I said, is there anything else we could do to help me progress before we break my water? And she said, well, we could do a Foley bulb, although maybe we should have done that at the very beginning. And I was kind of well, then why didn't we do it? But I don't know if that was really necessarily her fault. I don't really know whose fault that was, but we didn't do any of that, other, cervix. That's supposed to help your cervix kind of manually open. We didn't do any of that at the beginning. They just jumped the Pitocin. And I think that might have been because I was showing signs of pre-eclampsia. They also did a blood panel and a urine sample, and I was showing the liver stuff was not right. There was protein in my urine. So I had other signs that I was developing pre-eclampsia. So that kind of put me on a clock. I couldn't just sit there and labor for days on end because pre-eclampsia is very dangerous and they need to get those babies out because once you deliver the babies, your body tends to go back to normal with the pre-eclampsia. So I was on the clock. I've been through this kind of crazy last, over 24 hours. And I I finally, so then I think that it's really blurry for me because this whole thing, I was just like so exhausted and like just mentally delusional at this point. But I remember, I think I ended up having her just break my water, and that sent the level of pain from excruciating to like, I don't even know, beyond excruciating. I don't even know what the word for it was. Like I truly feel like my soul left my body once she broke my water. And again, I'm still unmedicated. And I knew that I had a long, like it was going to take a long time for me to progress. Probably, she said, another 10 to 12 hours, because it's like usually about 1 centimeter an hour. So I was just so defeated at that point. And I was like, I think I need the epidural. I don't think I can make it through the rest of this labor, especially not even knowing that I'm going to progress and knowing that it could be like 10 to 12 more hours. I was just so worn down. I hadn't eaten, I hadn't slept. And at this point, I broke down crying and crying to Max. And I was just like, I can't believe I'm getting the epidural. This is not what I intended to do. Like, this was not what I wanted. And again, nothing wrong with the epidural. I'm one of 11 siblings. My mom got the epidural for like, I think almost all of us. I think the first 2 she didn't. I can't remember if that's correct. But she had the epidural for almost all of us. She gave birth to us vaginally. One thing that I really wanted to avoid if I could was a C-section, because 75% of twins, I guess, are born via C-section. And again, there's nothing wrong with C-sections, but I just know that it is a major surgery. So it's a lot harder, from what I've heard, on your body to recover from that than from like a vaginal birth. So I didn't really want a vaginal birth just for the recovery based on what I've heard. But at that point, I was getting really worried that I was heading for a C-section because I'd been in labor for so long. I wasn't progressing at all. It just seemed like, and I've also heard that, I guess for some people, I don't know if this is true, but for some people, I guess the epidural can sometimes slow down your labor. I don't know. It was just so many things that I'd read, and I just felt like, you know, I didn't want to end up with a C-section. But at that point, I was just like so exhausted and so like defeated that I was just like, all right, I got to do this. I got to get the epidural. So I got the epidural. It was 10 p.m. that night. And I didn't really like how the epidural made me feel. And what happened was I finally fell asleep for the first time in like 2 full days. And I slept for like, I think only like an hour and a half that night. The rest of the time I just kind of laid there and closed my eyes, but I wasn't sleeping because my body just felt so weird. When I finally fell asleep, I woke up and I felt like my body was frozen. Like my arms and legs were so heavy from the epidural medication that I felt like I couldn't move in the bed. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm trapped in my body. And I started having like a panic attack. And I started like yelling out like, Max, Max. But my husband was sleeping on the couch over like across the room, and he's a very heavy sleeper, and he couldn't hear me like yelling his name. And so I tried to like turn over to my side to like press the button to call the nurse, and I couldn't even move my body that much. So it was terrifying. I felt like I was trapped in my own body. So I really did not like how the epidural made me feel. That being said, the next morning, my doctor checked me, and she kept checking me, I guess, throughout the night. And then the next morning, I was dilated fully to a 10. I was completely dilated, and my mind was blown. I was like, how is it that I was just sitting there? I mean, I was still in pain. I could feel the nerve pain that had been hurting that whole time. The epidural kind of like blunted it a little bit, but that pain was honestly, if not worse, as bad as the contractions. And every time I contracted, that would intensify. And I still felt that nerve pain throughout the epidural. And I think that probably was part of what prevented me from sleeping, but it was really hard to tell at that point what it was that was preventing me. So basically I went through all of Friday night, all of Saturday night, and through those 2 nights, I got about an hour and a half of sleep. Everything I ate, I threw up. And once I got the epidural, I wasn't allowed to eat anything. And then it was Sunday morning. So it was like 2 full days later, and I was dilated to a 10, and they're like, okay, you're gonna have the babies. And I was just like, wait, what? Like, I was truly and genuinely shocked that my body continued to progress. And at that point, I'd kind of just surrendered it to God. Like, okay, I'm going to meet my sons. I'm going to give birth. I've really given this my all, and whatever happens, happens. And I was just kind of shocked that that happened, and that I was able to, it looked like at that point, at least, give birth vaginally like I wanted to, and not get a C-section like I thought was going to happen. So another thing about delivering twins is they make you deliver in an operating room, which I really hated. I basically had to give birth on an operating table that was so narrow that my arms were like flopping off the sides of it. So my husband was like holding my arm up for me, and I was just like on this super narrow table. Like, this is a horrible place to give birth, and whoever thought of this But the reason that they make you do that is because the rate of C-section is so high with twins. And if you don't give birth to the first twin via C-section, it's likely that you could give birth to the second one, which is like, I think every twin mom's nightmare, because then you have two different places that you're healing from in your body. It's just like, you really don't want that to happen. So I went into the operating room, and right before I had given birth, my doctor had said to me, we need to make sure that your cervix stays open, because something that can happen with twins is after you have the first twin, your body can just say, oh, I've given birth, and your cervix can start closing. And that's when you have to have a C-section for the second twin. So I just kind of started getting into like warrior mode. Like I just completely tuned out everything. I was so exhausted. I was so like delirious, but I just kind of vaguely remember everything. It was like this out of body experience. All the doctors and nurses I remember being so nice. There was this one nurse that was kind of mean to me, but everyone else was so nice, so kind. And I just remember feeling like very supported, like these nurses that were like, you got this, you can do this. And like the anesthesiologist and like the male like nurses or whatever they were, I can't remember. I think one of them was like assisting the anesthesiologist. I don't remember, but they were all just like so kind and so supportive. And I remember feeling very supported, but I remember saying like, I need everyone to please like not have any loud conversations in the delivery room, because I really need to be in the zone. I was just like advocating for myself. And I kind of been doing that a lot throughout like my birth process, because I knew it was really important to advocate for yourself. So I got in there and I was just in the zone. I was like blocking everything out, because I just felt so like, I don't know how I'm going to do this, because I feel like I have nothing left in me, but I'm going to give birth and I'm going to do this. And here we go. So I sat there on the operating table and they had me start pushing. And I remember having this feeling of like, I cannot do this. This is so hard. I felt like I was sitting up to do crunches, and I ended up pushing my first son, Dominic, who came out for 45 minutes. And I just remember sitting there feeling like I was doing a workout for 45 minutes after being pregnant with twins for months and feeling horrible, having no sleep, no food, being like in debilitating pain for like hours on end. I was just like, I have nothing left to give, but somehow I'm supposed to push a baby out or two babies out. Okay. It was wild. So I sat there and I just kept pushing and pushing. And there was one point, actually there were several points where I felt like I was going to like give up, and I was like, I can't do this. Like the baby is stuck. They're never going to come out. And I can't do this. And I remember during the pushing phase, and this also happened actually throughout my labor, looking to the side in the room, and I would say out loud, I just couldn't stop myself, Jesus, Jesus, Jesus. And I wasn't using God's name in vain. I was truly thinking of Jesus. I was thinking of him on the cross and the intense pain that he felt. And I was just thinking like, I wonder if this is similar to how he felt, just like going through this intent, which obviously crucifixion is very different than birth, but like there is sort of this parallel of like Jesus suffered on the cross and so that he could give like eternal life to humanity. And I was suffering on the operating table so I could give life to my sons. And I felt like there was so much meaning and purpose, even within all of the intense suffering and pain and heartache that I was feeling throughout this process. And I remember looking to the side and I could literally, I don't know, it was like a vision, but like I could see the face of Jesus like on the cross with like blood on his forehead, like these piercing eyes looking at me. And I was looking back at him and I was just like, oh, it makes me want to cry. I was just like, I'm not alone. Like, sorry, I just like, yeah, it was crazy, but like, I'm not alone. I felt like God was not abandoning me. And I also had this thought later on, I think one of my friends actually points out to me that like, as I felt abandoned by God for not giving me the birth that I'd hoped for, I was also experiencing what Jesus felt in the garden when he was saying, my God, why have you forsaken me? And like, if you can let this cup pass from my lips, like, you know, basically do so, because it's just like such a hard thing to do. That was how I felt. I really felt abandoned by God. I felt like I couldn't do it. I had no strength. And yet I still felt in the end that God was so deeply present there with me. It was beautiful. And there was this one moment too with my husband that was really powerful. It was towards the end of pushing out my son, Dominic. And I looked over at Max and I was like, Max, I can't do this anymore. I need you to give me energy right now. Just give me your energy. My husband is a long distance runner. And I looked at him and I said, I need you to give me your long distance runner energy. Just give it to me. I didn't even know what I was saying. I was so delirious, but I swear something in that moment happened. And I don't know if it's just like that connection that we have, but like I had this burst of energy right after I asked him for that. And like within minutes, I pushed Dominic out. And my son Dominic was born, and he was beautiful. He was screaming. He was this beautiful 6-pound, 3-ounce baby. And there he was. So then after that, they kind of took him to the side, and I told him I didn't want him on my chest right away because I was afraid with how weak I felt that I wasn't going to be able to properly hold him and also push out my second son. So I said, can you give him to my husband so he can do skin to skin with him, and I will push out my next baby. That was what I'd asked for ahead of time because I was just worried that I didn't want to like drop him or something. So then I knew, okay, now it's go time even more. I don't want my cervix to close. I got to get the second baby out. So, and then I also remember vaguely giving birth to the placenta and being like, please, can I see my placenta? Please, please. But like no one listened to me, and I don't know where it ended up, and I never got to see my placenta, and that was really sad because I just wanted to see what did my body grow to of. Like, I know it's like gross and probably really nasty looking, but like I just wanted to see what it looked like so bad and how big it was, but I never got to. So then I was getting ready to push out my second son, who, spoiler alert, ended up being my son, Leo. Leopold is his full name, but we call him Leo. So I was sitting there, and I remember again, everything in the room just disappeared. And I was like, in this out of body experience, like, okay, I need to keep my cervix open. And I remember people were talking and there was stuff going on, but I was not aware of any of it because all I could think of was a giant, this is kind of graphic, so sorry if you're a man, I hope you're not watching this, hope this is all women. But I could just think of like a giant circle, and I was like, cervix, stay open, cervix, stay open. And I just kept saying it over and over. And I pictured my muscles being relaxed and open and just like staying like that because I did not want to get a C-section with my second son. And while that was happening, I felt like literally 30 seconds passed. That's how it felt to me, but I guess it ended up being 7 minutes. It felt like 30 seconds, and I suddenly heard them say, your son, the second twin is out. He's out. And I was like, wait, what? Like my what? Like I was completely flabbergasted because I didn't even push him out or anything. I just remember thinking about my cervix, and then suddenly my son was out. And what happened, I was told later, I was very out of body in that moment, was that after my first son was born, my second son, Leo, so they both had been head down. Leo flipped into a breech position, which is not good for delivery. So my doctor, she is a warrior woman, reached up into my womb and flipped him back into a head down position and delivered him very quickly. And that ended up, I mean, that was great. I didn't have to have a C-section, but it was also very scary because my second son, Leo, came out so quickly, he didn't really get the chance to like, I guess going through the birth canal kind of slowly, there's a purpose in all of it. Like it helps kind of squeeze the fluid out of the baby's lungs with the contractions. There's a whole, and I'm not a scientist, I don't know, but that's what I've been told. But that did not happen with my son Leo because he came out, so he basically slipped out of the womb really quickly. And because he was like flipped and stuff, so when my second son Leo came out, he was purple, he was not breathing, his arms flopped at his side. He was like a rag doll. It was so scary. And I was like, is my son okay? Is my son okay? Is my son okay? I just kept asking over and over, and they were like, well, we're gonna cut the cords. I wanted to do delayed cord clamping, and we did that with my first son. But with Leo, it was like this emergency situation. I was like, just cut the cord, do what you gotta do. So they took him, and I didn't really see what was going on, but my husband Max told me that he saw it, and it was terrifying. They were like trying to like squeeze with this little like device. They were like trying to basically breathe life into him and air into him and resuscitate him. And they ended up being able to do so, thankfully. And he like sputtered back to life, and he ended up being okay. And my first son, Dominic, was born at 11:20 a.m. on September 12th, 2021. And my second son, Leopold, was born at 11:27 on September 12th, 2021. And yeah, so that was the story of their birth. And I just remember right after they were born, looking around at all the nurses and Max and my doctor, and I was just like, I can't believe that just happened. I can't believe it. I can't believe I just did that. Like, I was just in shock. I couldn't believe that after all that I'd been through in the days leading up to that I actually gave birth to my sons. I was just like, oh my gosh. Like, I was kind of like euphoric. Like, I can't believe that happened. I can't believe it's finally over. Like, I'm no longer in pain. Like, oh my gosh, like it was just like this high and this beautiful like adrenaline rush. And I feel like I should kind of spend a few minutes just kind of explaining what happened after that but I won't, maybe I'll go more in detail of that later. But I ended up spending a week in the hospital after that. Well, it was a week total. So it was like 5 days after the birth. Because I ended up developing postpartum pre-eclampsia. So I always thought that once you deliver your babies, then you're done and the pre-eclampsia would go away, which that's what most people have told me, but that's not actually true. You can actually develop postpartum pre-eclampsia within 6 weeks after you deliver your babies. So it was 2 days after I gave birth and I was supposed to be discharged and my blood pressure jumped dangerously high. Like, I think it was 170 over 110. And they basically told me that I looked like it kept going up and up. And they said, you're basically heading for a seizure at this rate. So they had to put me on a treatment it was just like a magnesium drip, which was horrible. I thought, oh, magnesium, isn't that like a vitamin that you take, like a pill, like a mineral? But it's not. Basically what happened was I had to be taken down to a lower level floor and they put me on this IV for 24 hours and I had to stay in a bed because the treatment makes you feel so horrible and like sick. It makes you feel like you have the flu. So I had to stay on that treatment for 24 hours. I had a catheter, so I couldn't even go to the bathroom. I had all of these machines, blood pressure cuff, these things on my legs, squeezing my legs to make sure I didn't get a blood clot. I can't remember what those were called. Heart rate monitor, all this stuff was hooked up to me all night long for 24 hours and I couldn't leave the bed. And it was horrible. I felt so claustrophobic. I felt so sick to my stomach, like just like awful. Also on top of that, I'm just kind of explaining like how my hospital week was and why I felt so bad. I was on a blood pressure medicine because I had high blood pressure during like the delivery and afterwards. So I was on 2 different blood pressure medications and I felt awful. I was shaking uncontrollably to the point where I would pick up my water cup in the recovery room and I would spill it all over my hospital gown. And it happened like several times. I was dizzy. I could barely keep my eyes open, but every time I tried to sleep, my body would start shaking and I had this intense anxiety, like I was having a panic attack. So for the next 5 days in the hospital, I slept at the most an hour to an hour and a half every night. After having the delivery that I had, I was like, oh, I'm gonna recover now, I'm gonna sleep. Yeah, I didn't sleep until I got home like a full week later. And then I finally got a good night's sleep. But like I was a absolute zombie. And also my body was filling with fluid because of the preeclampsia that I was developing before I got the magnesium treatment. So I will say, like, for me physically, my stay in the hospital afterwards was absolutely horrific. I also had this nurse that was like kind of bullying me. And I don't really want to go into detail on that, but like she basically was just making a lot of really mean spirited comments to me. And I honestly don't really know what her deal was, but she just did not like me. And I had her like several 12-hour shifts. And that was very traumatic because I was in such a vulnerable state. And this nurse just kept saying these like very hurtful, offensive things to me. And that was just like really, really hard for me to deal with. And the last element, and probably the worst out of all of this, like worse than my physical state, was having my son Leo. So my son Leo, who was born second, because of all the stuff that happened, he had to be in the NICU for a week. He was born, he was only 5 pounds, and he had low blood sugar, he had feeding issues, so he had to be in the NICU for a week. And I've heard people say that the NICU is traumatizing, but I did not know until I experienced it how absolutely horrible it was. Seeing your little baby who is so tiny that all you want to do is have them with you for an entire week, hooked up to all these machines, sleeping alone in this plastic box, basically. And I know there's nurses and stuff that are very caring and stuff, but it's not like they're just there holding the baby all day. No, they have other babies to tend to. And I went and visited him and he was just sitting alone in this box, looking around. I cried and cried my eyes out every time that I went to visit him. I couldn't stop crying. I felt so embarrassed because there was like all these people around, but I was sobbing. Like I couldn't handle seeing my baby like that and leaving him. Oh my gosh, it just like, it makes me want to cry thinking about it again. Like that was the worst part, was at night, I would go and visit him again and I would leave him. And I just, like knowing that he was going to sleep by himself in that box all night. And I know like he, you know, the nurses would check on him and stuff, but like, I know that he wasn't being held. Like I would take care of him. And it was just the most excruciatingly, emotionally painful experience. So the combination of all those things, I just had a horrible experience in the hospital after I gave birth. Looking back in the birth experience, as hard as it was, I felt like it was empowering, because at the end of it, I was like, wow, I did that. That was so hard. I can't believe I did that. I'm so proud of myself. I can't believe my body did that. But the experience in the hospital afterwards was so honestly traumatizing. Like for weeks afterwards, like I'd be by myself, you know, for a few minutes, because having newborns is crazy. Having 2 newborns is insane. But I'd be like by myself upstairs taking a shower for like, you know, 20 minutes. And I would think about something in the hospital and I would immediately just start crying, because it was so painful. Like the whole experience was so dark. It was so heavy. And it was just honestly like the hardest thing I think I've ever done. And I feel like, and I've been through a lot of things in life, but like that was traumatizing, really, really hard. But at the same time, I do feel empowered looking back at it now that it's been 2 months. I'm just like, wow, I can't believe my body did that. And at the end of the day, I have these 2 beautiful sons that are so precious. I love, love, love getting to spend time with them. They're downstairs right now with their dad. And I can't wait to go back and just hug them, because they're so precious to me. And that is the greatest gift. So all in all, that was my birth story. And there's so many more details that I could share, but I'm trying to be as succinct as possible. So now this video is over 30 minutes. I'm just not a succinct person. I hope that all made sense. I hope that it wasn't too scatterbrained. And I just hope that this video helps one person out there. If there's one person that experienced anything that I did, and this video made you feel a little bit less alone, like the videos that I watched made me feel, that is my goal. So if you're giving birth, or if you're, you know, about to, you already did, you're getting ready, you're looking back on a traumatic birth experience, just know that I'm with you. I feel for you. I'm sending you love, because I know how hard it is. It is so hard. And it's so, there's a sense of grief knowing that like you wanted your birth to be this like beautiful, magical thing, which like, yeah, moments of it were. Meeting my sons, that was absolutely magical. But there was so much heartache and hardship, and I don't want to sugarcoat that, because that's just what it was for me. It was really, really hard and really painful. But at the end of the day, I do believe that it made me a stronger person. It made my faith in God even stronger, as weird as it sounds, even feeling abandoned at certain moments, because I know that he didn't abandon me. I know he was there. And at the end of the day, I got 2 beautiful, healthy sons, and that is the greatest gift from God that I could ask for. So that's my story. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel. I'm going to be posting more videos. Now that the twins are 2 months old, I'm kind of getting a little bit more slightly into the swing of things, a little less overwhelmed. And I really miss posting my YouTube channel. And I have so many more ideas for videos. If you have ideas for videos, please write them in a comment below. I'd love to hear from you. And if you made it this far, wow. Thank you for watching. I know this was a very long video, and I hope you enjoyed it and that it wasn't too scatterbrained. All right, bye guys.